Okay. Hello, everyone. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. So, I guess I'll begin. So, I have been spending the last couple days focusing on emotions. And to contextualize this lecture, pretty much this thought occurred to me that if I can't trust my emotions, how can I trust people? And I want to speak as someone who in some sense has failed. I have failed in this category. Or I shouldn't say I have failed, but I just want to, I experienced something. I realized there was a better way to go through it, and I'm pretty much sharing it. Okay? So, let me see. How do I explain it? All right. Talking about emotions is very interesting, first of all. I believe that human beings don't have just separate, different DNAs. We are positioned differently in existence. And therefore, human beings have different perceptions, therefore different engagements with reality. I will start with the imagery of, in some sense, all right. Guys, bear with me. I haven't slept at all. I'll honestly say this, that growing up in this world, for a very long time, I was introverted and shy. And it was as if I was not real to myself. I did not value myself. I did not care for myself. Many years I lived as if, in some sense, being an observer of reality, then participating in it. And even years later, it took me 20 years to kind of realize, in some sense, the mistake. But the beautiful thing is that sometimes you become happy that it's too late, and in some sense, the introversion turned out to have a purpose, later on. But it was also unnecessary. That means when I was, if you in some sense ask me about my childhood, I was blessed, I was very blessed. But at the same time, I did not have a blessed view on myself. I don't know, I mean, maybe as a human being you have felt this, maybe not. But as someone who felt a sort of exile, I felt a force field, and I couldn't breach it. I couldn't, in some sense, surpass the limitations that I had accepted to myself. And so what I ended up doing as a human being was that I stopped becoming numb to myself, but the emotions of others were real to me. As a human being on this earth, this is going to sound bizarre to you, but I'm telling you, this was the case. That others were more important than me. Do you know what I mean? That means my attention wasn't on myself. This is very bizarre. But I guess I must be honest with the life I have lived. For years hidden behind myself, a self that I could not understand. Years later, everything I'm telling you at the time I did not understand. At the time there was a simplicity of like, all right, this is it. Sometimes when you're young and you experience something, you don't know its ethics. You don't know if it should have happened or not. But inevitably, like, something happens in life and you go forth. So, I'm trying to tell you that when I was young, because my self-worth was close to nothing, but nobody knew. Nobody, in some sense, there was, I believe every human being is dealing with hidden moments in life. And what I'm trying to tell you, and you might be as a human being, hey, like, let's say up to high school, you didn't realize that you were an emotional entity, that it was okay to express. Couldn't you see others expressing themselves? I don't know how to explain it, but when you don't like yourself, you don't really like expressing yourself. And the archetype I had put myself in. Welcome, guys. I just noticed the chat section. Welcome to an episode where I am openly and directly sharing my emotional flaws. So what I'm trying to tell you, whoever you are, learn from me. Learn from the mistakes I've made. And the mistake I made was that when I was young, I didn't realize, hey man, everybody's new to the moment. Everybody is allowed to exist. It's as if I hadn't read I wasn't smart enough at the time to, in some sense, understand the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I was overwhelmed by society. In some sense, the environment was correct and I had accepted myself wrong and I disliked being myself. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, I dislike myself. What am I going to do around other people? And in my mind, I decided, and I was also, I had fear. And based on that, I shut myself up. I shut myself off. That's what I'm trying to say. I closed myself from reality. I accepted that it's okay, that years go by and nobody asks you what's wrong with you. And in accepting that, something strange happened. It's like life is very strange. Whatever happens to you, you end up adapting. And so the way I adapted was that I would, in some sense, I couldn't feel. That means I couldn't feel happy myself. But when others felt happy, I could feel part of a happy moment. Do you know? And of course, I have a unique situation too, and let me explain to you what the unique situation is. I was born a twin. I'm a twin. I have a twin brother, same age. When we were born, we both looked at each other, after you, no, after you, no, after you. And I feel like in some sense, because I was born first, my twin brother's like trying to punish me all the time. I'll tell you something crazy, just to have it on record. When my mother was pregnant, they went to the doctor, and in the imaging, it didn't appear as twins. Okay. And so my mother got scared. She thought there was something wrong, with the baby. This is a story that they told me. And my father, he puts his hand on my mother's stomach, and he looks at my mother and he says, "I feel there's two souls here." And the doctor was like, "No, in the imaging, it just shows one kid. We don't understand why the stomach is so big." And then in the second time, out of that fear, my mother just constantly praying. It's a scary situation when you don't know what's going on. And then the doctor says, "Yo, there's another one." And it was my twin brother behind me. And I don't know why I have this feeling. That I will also die first. Some exist to open doors as invisible forces. Just like I have entered this life, I will enter death. And I will go to meet the system admin of this existential server. Guys, I'm going to get emotional in this lecture, but I think it fits. Because sometimes this might be one of the most bizarre things that you're going to ever hear, but sometimes it's beautiful to see your own, this might sound bizarre, but to see your own misery. to see your own chaos. When I was younger, I didn't appreciate failure. But now I understand they're all citizens of the experience that journeys on. Victory and failure are citizens of our experience, of our experiential domain. So, to go back to the title, I'm trying to tell you, I'm using myself as an example. This is a report as a member of the human species. I am reporting to the whole species that be very careful. I didn't trust my own emotions. I didn't trust when I say I didn't trust my emotions, let me tell you what I mean. It doesn't mean that I couldn't, I was emotional and I didn't realize it. I don't mean that. It's kind of like if you can't accept and understand what's going on with you, it becomes very difficult to understand others. Like if you don't know what drinking water is, if you see someone drinking water, you don't understand it. You know, you'd be like, why is this person, eat. So anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that how can a person expect to understand others if they cannot understand themselves to some degree, their own emotions? How can you, in some sense, trust other people's emotions how can you care for other people's emotions if you don't care for your own emotions? And that's the thing, that sometimes when you're young, the world convinces you you're inferior, but something is being built up during that time. The day of your superiority. You know, in one lecture, I was playfully saying, imagine after this life, I'm standing, I'm at the afterlife, I'm in the Barzakh, in the Bardo or whatever. And it's like, imagine I'm after my death, I'm like, what was that about? What was life about? You know what I mean? What was this whole thing I just went through? So, it's very important to wonder about the human intelligence, to wonder about it as a technology, to wonder about what this technology gives you access, to wonder about the different states of your own being. And so, I guess the point is, if you have not been loved, it might be difficult to love. If you have not been cared for, you might not know how to care. If you have, in some sense, not trusted yourself, it's going to be very difficult to trust others. And how does a person trust themselves? Trust their self? It is not an image relationship. If somebody, if I could go back to myself in the past and explain to that shy, introverted kid who felt life was going forward, was passing him by, and he was just sat in a room, I would say, you don't understand. Oh, past self of mine. If you had communicated, you would have felt more. And that means, in some sense, my future self would look at my past self and say, it doesn't matter. You could have been extroverted. You could have right now, had so many people whose lives you were involved in. But instead, you chose to live in the inner realms. And I have to live with that. I have to live with the fact that I did not give myself permission to exist when I was younger. But it's okay. Because whether you learn it in an easy way or a hard way, you learn it. But the regrets don't bother me. What bothers me is when there is an efficient route, but an inefficient route is taken. It's all about advancement. And so whoever you are, it might take some time, but there will come a moment where the fears that hold you back will move aside. And you will discover what your true power holds. I have a way more deeper perspective on emotions. I'm going to share it. I'm going to try to share it accurately, because when you talk about emotions, I guess I got to pinpoint the feeling. Because in my youth, as much of it was a downside to not be able to participate, to not feel free, to not feel worthy of your own expression as a being, it did take me on a unique path. And it took me to a moment where, as a man in this world, I felt a savageness. I don't know how to say it. It's like the stuff you don't care about at first, the stuff you care about but you can't do anything about, at first it bothers you. But then your attention moves on. And so I would say the most therapeutic thing that has happened to me has been to, in some sense, it has been the expansion of my awareness. It has been the shift from knowledge, which is seeing how something looks like, to understanding. The applications of human intelligence. That means, in some sense, it's about references. When I was young, I didn't have reference points. I mean, there were people in front of me being extroverted, but I did not have reference points about how much more freer I could have lived. Do you know? And it came years later. Do you know, sometimes in life, you know, it's strange. I believe there's a destiny. This might be a very strange thing, but I believe there's destiny. And I believe there's a destiny in regards to our desires. You know, there was a time where I was like, hey man, you know, why aren't we more advanced than this? You know, and it occurred to me that we have to go through this to advance beyond this. I had to go through this discomfort of communication to then actually care, and at some point become very comfortable communicating. To a degree that I can pretty much talk about anything and zoom into anything in that, and in some sense talk for hours. It's the same with writing too. You don't understand. There was a time where I tested it just to be playful. I took a notebook and I had this pen. It wasn't a new pen, granted, but it was just some pen I had borrowed. And it wasn't a pen I had borrowed. It was one of my pens. But the whole point of it was, was that I began one night and I wrote a complete poetry book that one night. I think I wrote around 20, maybe above 20 something poems. And they were like 2 page, sometimes 3 page poems. But the way I was writing it was not where I had to sit down and think, zoom in on everything. It was as if I was seeing something behind my eyes and I just knew how to turn it into words. You don't understand. We don't think that human beings have understood how to be human. Don't for 1 second think that we figured out what's going on. The human species doesn't know. It's just temporarily projected a model to know it. Okay? And now, as someone in my 30s, I'm trying to figure out what the hell my repressed emotions were. But to be honest, my conclusions on life kind of render some of the emotions void. Some of the emotions are still, I know that there's emotions I haven't felt yet based on archetypes I haven't accessed yet. Think of it this way. If you cannot trust yourself to express your emotions, the downside may be that you may not be able to trust other emotions, other people's emotions completely. And of course, keep in mind it's a deceptive world we're living in. Especially for young men, I'll say this. And let me tell you why. Even for young women, it applies. Pretty much, life, think of it this way, there's a bunch of beings ahead of you, and there's a bunch of beings behind you. Now, the beings ahead of you see something more than you, and the beings behind you see something less than you. And it depends on your nature. It depends on your nature how you behave. There was this TikTok video that kind of disturbed me, but it was necessary to see. And it was this video of all these, girls. I think I saw this years ago. All these girls who were fake crying. And of course, I know that there's like Oscars, you give actors, and human beings have a capability to act, but sometimes when the act is mixed with emotion, you can't tell, right? And it took me a while to understand that I have to quickly figure out people's contexts, and then in some sense, like where they're coming from, and then I completely understand who they are. Do you know? What I'm trying to say is emotions, it's something where when I was asking AI in a previous talk I gave, it was saying like they're going to teach it. There's going to be emotional literacy. Do you know what that means? That means they're going to teach people how to feel. How to be conscious of their feelings. I'm 100% sure there's some men on this planet. And honestly, I find myself, like, even though, like most people around me who I've spoken about, like, when the topic has come up, I constantly say that I don't really, like the way I was conditioned, I don't care too much about my emotions, because at the end of the day, I have to stabilize my responsibility for the whole thing. You see, I'm not telling people to, just become emotional all the time. I am saying that you're an intelligent being. There's functions to you. One of your functions is, for example, physical movement. Another function is ideological movement, a kind of way that emotions are understood. And I'm going to read for you, there's a research component to this lecture. But emotions are kind of understood to be signals prior to conscious thought. It's like how the body, it's like there's a version of you right now that is not dependent on information or is based on the information it currently has, and emotions are in some sense kind of an uncalculated response. It's like, I shouldn't say that way, they're signals. It's like when you can't calculate something, you go based on feeling. Imagine you go to like some kitchen store, kitchen appliances store, and you want to buy a refrigerator, and the salesman comes and says, "Yo, man, this refrigerator, it appeared out of nowhere in our store. In its freezer, there's a portal. It has advanced tech. You don't need to plug it to the wall." Do you know? And the guy could give you, logically, it could make perfect sense for you to buy that. But a part of you is going to be like, I don't know, man. I don't like the color. I don't like the style. What does that mean? This means that there is not only an outer physical self, there is not only an inner subjective ideological self, there is also, so in your outer realms, you have a physical body. In your inner realms, you have a subjective self and you have an emotional self. And your mind is also being held in an awareness, in the awareness of your whole moment. I'm not standing here as someone like trying to tell you I'm like like I've understood emotions. I've understood my role in existence, and I've understood what emotions apply to that. And my role in existence is to, in some sense, be a human being that doesn't forget the future before the past, convinces me. I care for humanity. That's the core value. I at some point reached this point where I was like, yo, man, what's the value in this? And I was like, okay, if I live for myself only, if I ignore others, sure, it might be simpler, but why do they exist? Why are we in a world that requires us to be social? Why are we a biosocial entity? What I'm trying to tell you is that I realized that if you choose anybody, any being that chooses to be a problem solver in this reality, you choose that to solve problems, your logic will take you to a point where you're like, yo, man, I gotta solve the biggest problems. I think that human beings right now are finding honor in solving big problems. Do you know? And at some point, you're going to become fascinated by not what's going to happen to you, not what's going to happen to your family or your friends or your groups, not what's going to happen to your nation. You're going to care for what's going to happen to the species, what's going to happen to 8 billion eyes staring at the future. And then they begin to walk. I want to read something for you. This is the research portion of the lecture. Pretty much I asked AI, if I don't trust my emotions, how can I trust people? And I asked it to give a very academic, sophisticated answer. I want to read this for you. Emotions are our primary instruments for relational meaning making. According to effective neuroscience, Panksepp 1998, emotions precede cognition in evolutionary terms. They are the brain's way of rapidly assigning value to experiences, especially social ones. When we say in quotations, I don't trust my emotions, we are in effect saying that we don't trust the internal signaling system that evaluates the relational safety, danger, or intimacy. From a systems perspective, Bateson 1972 says the self is not an isolated unit but a node in a relational matrix. Emotions are feedback loops that help us navigate the system through signals like fear, joy, empathy, or anxiety. When we doubt these internal signals, the system becomes noisy or unreadable. This introduces what psychologists call emotional dissonance, a misalignment between inner feeling and outward behavior, which leads to relational distrust both inwardly and outwardly. In attachment theory, Bowlby 1969 says trust in others stem from early emotional experiences. When emotions were dismissed or invalidated in childhood, people often grow up mistrusting their emotional compass. As a result, all future interpersonal relationships become entangled in projection, overcompensation, or detachment. Not because others are inherently, guys, this is so important, not because others are inherently untrustworthy, but because the internal reference system is damaged. Trust in others is not a purely rational decision, it is a co-regulated emotional process. When your emotional system is dysregulated or discredited, you cannot co-regulate with others. It's like trying to harmonize with an orchestra while doubting your own instrument is tuned. Thus, the ability, what an incredible metaphor. Thus, the ability to trust people is deeply connected to the ability to receive and interpret emotional signals within yourself. To repair this, you must not bypass emotion for logic, but rather integrate emotion with discernment. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Emotions, when understood rather than avoided, become the very maps by which we trust others wisely, not blindly. All right, guys, I'm going to read a summary of this for you. This is super important. I'm going to just turn off the music. Here's the summary. Emotions are the way our mind tells us what feels safe, what feels wrong, and who we can connect with. If you don't trust your emotions, it's like not trusting your own radar. It becomes hard to know who to let in and who to keep at a distance. Guys, this is a huge reason for shyness. Like, I'm debunking shyness right now. When we grow up in environments where our emotions are ignored, judged, or misunderstood, we often learn to doubt them. And if we doubt our emotions, we can't really feel secure around others either. Because emotions are what help us feel closeness, understand danger, or build trust. Trusting others isn't just a logical decision. It's something we feel. So if we've been trained to turn off those feelings, it becomes hard to connect. We might overthink everything, push people away, or attach too quickly to the wrong ones. The key is learning to listen to our emotions, not to obey them blindly, but to understand them. When we rebuild trust in our emotional signals, we begin to trust others in a clearer, healthier way. Guys, above there was a sentence I want to zoom in on. It says, trust in others is not a purely rational decision. It is a co-regulated emotional process. Now, listen to this part. When your emotional system is dysregulated or discredited, you cannot co-regulate with others. It's like trying to harmonize with an orchestra while doubting your own instrument is tuned. Thus, the ability to trust people is deeply connected to the ability to receive and interpret emotional signals within yourself. Now, for me, the introversion and shyness, it kind of catapulted into me the opposite of it. Okay, like what I lacked in my youth, I came, like, now I've reached it. Do you know what I mean? But the whole situation has just expanded. Like, do you know what I mean? The whole context has expanded, right? So the main point for you to take away here, whoever you are, is first of all, be careful in your interactions with humans. Okay, because everything is, you're creating memories for your future self. At the same time, any parent, okay, like, how do I say this? If a child is born in this world and they can't trust, okay, they can't, if they're born in this world and they can't trust themselves, like, let me tell you the hidden cost of introversion and shyness. The guitar that needs to play with the symphony is untuned. Okay? So pretty much what I'm saying, and what I've realized now, I can explain it better, is that in my youth, I was not emotionally tuned. That means I was not regulating, or I was not brave with myself enough to be like, all right, man, you're feeling something off, do something about it. Do you know? And so I instead ended up ignoring it. And I can tell you experientially, many times I couldn't understand people's emotions. I couldn't interpret it. And it's not that you can always understand someone's emotions. Sometimes you can never, you don't have their eyes. But I'm saying it was like if everybody learns an alphabet, like, the 26 letters of the alphabet, if we considered an alphabet to emotions, I was not conscious of it. And do you know, pretty much this is how human beings are raised. If something doesn't correct you, do you know, you're left with correcting yourself, and sometimes you can correct yourself incorrectly. You might feel like you're doing the right thing, but it could be incorrect. So, I mean, it is also one of the fascinating aspects of life to wonder about our functions as a being. We weren't born here with a manual. All right, read this, and then you'll know how to be human. No. We were born being tested, and when you test something, you're testing something's true ability. I believe existence is a test for the soul. And the soul is unknown, which renders me, looking at this world as if it's a bunch of unknown beings acting like they know what's going on, and when their models of knowledge shift, they get emotional. For me personally, like, it might not, I mean, it's probably not a big deal to you, but for me, you don't understand. It was built up. It's like, I'll give you an example. Imagine, you go somewhere, right? And how do I say it? Okay, I'll give you an example. It's like, imagine you're sitting at home. This didn't happen to me. I'm just using this as an example. Imagine there's a kid, there's a bunch of kids, siblings, sitting at a dinner table. And, one of the parents, one of the kids, they don't feed one of the kids. Okay? One of the kids doesn't get food or gets very little. That kid is going to be upset, emotional. Why am I not being treated fairly in this house? Do you know what I mean? But it's going to understand that if you wanted an outcome, and if you wanted something in the world, and the world didn't change, you have to change. Because one of the biggest reasons why even now, I still, emotions are very complex for me. And it's not like I'm an analytical being all the time, but it's like, the reason emotions are complex for me, and this is a very important question, because one day AI and androids may be asking this question. And they'll be astonished to figure out that even human beings wondered about how they're emotional, how they have emotions. It's pretty much like some unknown event's been going on, and we've managed to like translate it into languages we can utilize. Okay. So, anyways, keep that in mind. For me, I had this force built up in me. There was a lot I felt I hadn't. Like there were so many moments. Imagine like I'll give you an example. Imagine like you're a soccer player, or you're like some athlete, and you go to the ceremony or the other teammates, and there's a other team, and the other team doesn't shake your hand. Do you know? Imagine you're someone, you always raise your hand for people to shake it. Imagine somebody doesn't shake your hand, or people just don't shake your hand. You know what I mean? At some point, you're not going to raise your hand anymore. That's my point. It's just an example. You know? So the whole point of it is that the human being is a creature that is adapting. Sometimes it may experience a situation where it's lacking, and it adapts to that lack. Okay? Or it finds a way to adapt to the lack. For me, my inability to express myself freely, and the inability to comprehend my own emotions and to even ethically know what the correct emotion was, you know, or the possible emotions. I had at some point, I was like, I normalized it. And when I normalized it, it didn't bother me. This is the bizarre thing. I'm starting to realize once human beings normalize something, it doesn't bother them anymore. Okay? And for example, if someone's a smoker, they've normalized it. The issue is not with even chemical. It's that they've normalized the action. Do you know? And so I had normalized it for me, and even to this point, it's still normalized to me that really my emotions don't matter. They matter to me. But to others, I can't see how it can matter. I guess this is a failure in my own perception. You know? What that means is the significance of an emotion. Emotions are showing vulnerability. Someone being emotional is like they're pulling the curtain of their ego to kind of show what values are affecting them actually behind the scenes. And as a man, I don't know, like on some level, I'm like, okay, I could be as emotional. I could just sit and cry for all the regrets of my past, and just in some sense, just endlessly have tears of like what could have been, you know? But at the same time, I'm like, yo, man, it doesn't matter the past. It just got me here, and the future is what's interesting. For me on this planet, after 12,000 days of logging in and out of this planet, in this world server, the future is interesting. That means right now, like even if there was somebody who's like, hey man, how did you feel when you were young? I'll be like, I don't care. Like whatever I felt, I don't care. Even if I felt good, there's so many moments in my youth I felt good, but I didn't care. I had good emotions, but I didn't care. It was the bad emotions that kind of stayed. Do you know what I mean? There is something about the human beings that I think what is good is like normal. Do you know? So only the bad things are noticed. Do you know what I mean? It's like women. There was this video that was saying women are like, where are the good guys? Do you know? But all they're actually interested is by the wilderness of the man. Do you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is human beings, even emotions are like a language. I think this is the best way of saying every person speaking their own emotional dialect. Do you know what I mean? You could like say something and somebody bursts out laughing in their emotional dialect. What you said made perfect sense. You know what I mean? In their emotional dialect, like somebody stares and it's like, there's nothing funny about that, man. Do you know what I'm saying? So emotions are very fascinating. To be honest, you being an entity, like you could have been born as a bird, imagine. Like if you were a bird, or if you were like whatever else, lesser species, you would not have an awareness that you're being aware of your body, mind, thoughts, and what else. Do you see what I'm saying? And emotions are very important because the joys of life are there. You know, there's this sentence that says some people just exist and some people truly live. Well, what's the distinction between that? What is the distinction between that? The distinction is that those who live life are not afraid of its emotional reality. And the cost of experiencing emotional realities is vulnerability. And when I was young, I had this dilemma of not knowing how to be myself. And the advice I was being given by everything was like, be yourself. Even you saw it in movies. The kid went to like some wiser person. It's like, yo, what do I do? You know, I'm having, girl problems. You know what I mean? And then the uncle or whatever, whoever it was, the father figure or whatever, it's like, yo, be yourself, kid. No, and the issue was they didn't finish the sentence. Be yourself. Nobody cares because nobody can care for the eyes they don't have. If right now all our brains were connected, like to some one collective mind, then I would make a case and then it makes sense for me to be emotional. Because I would have an emotional expectation because others can see my emotions. And this is why I'm saying one of the most revolutionary things that I've communicated on this planet, for this planet, is that understand you're living an inner life. And your inner life is not based, it's a system that is not based on just real elements. It's based on abstract events. What that means is, if imagine you're like looking for your keys in the present, and you try to remember the last place you put your keys. What does that mean? You're in the present, the past is gone physically, but you can remember. You can evoke the past. I started to understand the clue, and this is not very good because, how do I say it? I believe magic, playing with spirituality too much, thinking you are the highest power, these are all errors. These are all have negative consequences. Okay? Or not negative consequences, destabilizing consequences. Okay? And what we find in nature, brilliantly, is a sort of self-regulating system, self-sustaining system. So it's not just that we're having thoughts, and it's not just our free will is adjusting us and moving us. If it is shown, if there's evidence that the biological system heals itself, regenerates itself, the cells, every cell in your body from 10 years ago has changed. The cells in your brain change every longer time. Do you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, why aren't you getting emotional that you have a completely different body than you had like 10 years ago? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, that wasn't the point I was trying to make, but I was like, that's a good point. So in the effort of a human being to comprehend reality, to understand that the body heals itself, and perhaps emotions are how the mind is healing itself. And it is very peculiar that when I was young, it hasn't happened for such a long time, I don't know what to say about it, but when I was young, I would have emotions linger. They were like weather. It was as if it was a rainy day for like weeks, but it wasn't raining outside. The emotion would linger. But now, even if I do get emotional, life's excitement is so much faster that I cannot just linger on an emotion of an abstract self of mine had. You know what I'm saying? That means if somebody's like, yo,
See, right now I have a capability of making arguments for how emotions are very important and how at the same time emotions are not important. So I guess this means it's conditional. In certain conditions, if you're not emotional, people are going to be like, what's wrong with you? In certain situations, if you are emotional, people are going to be like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? So it's all about, this notion of that we are regulating ourselves to be able to, co-regulate with others. And something very beautiful, something that I am so blessed, I think we all are blessed, that we're not in a world of clones. Everybody has a different DNA. Everybody is shaped differently. Everybody is positioned differently. Everybody has lived a life that nobody else knows about. Like, that's the beautiful thing. So to me, I'm trying to tell you, you start off like, I can see people. Let me tell you what I mean by this. It might not be easy to explain how I can do this, but it's easy to explain. Like, okay, I'll explain it like this. When I look at human beings, I am not just it's not just a checklist on their physical capability. What that means is, imagine like 8 billion tourists visited, like, I don't know, some famous tourist attraction spot. Let's say, what do I say? It's like, imagine there's so many tourists that go to New York, but how someone who's living in New York feels about New York and how someone who's visiting New York and feels about New York are completely different. And I'm trying to tell you, the fascinating thing about life and what they lied to you is that they made you think your teachers were in school. You have 8 billion teachers, 8 billion DNAs that perceive reality in ways that no one else has. You also, the world is your teacher. And at some point you'll be like, what am I doing using this word teacher student? We're just all explorers and we're just going up this ranking system. That's what school's going to be in the future. Emotions can arise based on the context, the world changing, and emotions can arise based on the concept, the self changing. So for someone to be able to trust their emotions, they have to understand their emotions, and in order to understand their emotions, they have to understand how the self and world are interacting. And what you soon will discover is that in front of your eyes, yes, your physical body has a relationship with the physical world, but behind your eyes, you have a relationship with not just the physical reality, which is free imagination. You have a relationship with a mind that can function at different speeds, and the faster it gets, it becomes cinematic. Do you know what that means? I'll give you the proof of it. If you, the next time you read a book, try to read it as fast as you can. Okay? You're going to see, you know, that it's going to become a film in your mind. Start off with like fiction. Okay? So what I'm saying is, human beings remember films much easier than they remember sentences on a page. You can ask kids about the films they've seen, the shows they see on TV, and they'll tell you everything about it. You can ask someone, hey, you know, like, What did that one orc at the back of the army in Lord of the Rings yell? You know, what sound did it yell? You know? I mean, people probably won't remember that. It was some sort of grunt. But what I'm trying to tell you is that you have access not to just the physical interface in front of your eyes, or when you look at your own face in the mirror. You know what I mean? You have access to a subjective interface. This subjective interface is based on your value system. Your value system is arising from a condition. The condition is a self in a world. Now, what's strange is in front of our eyes, we're a self in a world. Behind our eyes, our awareness is to the world. So your mind has an ability to experience itself as a self and the world. Your body has an ability to only experience itself as a self, as an individual. What you really are as a being is that behind all the applications of your mind, there is an awareness. So the way I treat, and the reason I'm explaining this is to kind of position emotions in it, I treat it as if my biological physical existence is my biological physical existence is my biological physical existence is like the character in the video game. I don't know if anyone here has ever played a multiplayer online game, but you should try it once in your life at least, just to see what it is, you know? And pretty much you find yourself in this map as a character with other avatars of characters, okay? And all these characters are being handled by these beings, these invisible beings, right? That means when I see a character in like in a multiplayer online game, when I see another player, I have no clue what computer they're using. I have no clue what they look like behind the scenes, but I have a clue in regards to the actions of their avatar. So I'm saying it's kind of like the same vibe here on Earth, where we're all in a three-dimensional, instead of a 2D screen and it being pixelated, it's three-dimensional, and it's made of the periodic table instead of pixels. It's made of particles, elements, and it's three-dimensional, and we log in, we log out, and you also register yourself. Do you know what I mean? And sure, somebody could make an argument that video games are based on life, you know, were made based on life, based on nature. Do you know? That's why they so well fit in human psychology. But I'll be like, no. If like that kind of proves my point that if video games are depicting life, then it kind of shows that the soul is even though as a Muslim I believe the soul is the secret of God, secret of the system admin, but it's also the amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the command of the system admin. But for me, the soul is like, right now, this body of mine is the avatar. And I'm in a conscious existential I'm conscious of an existential simulation. I'm in the video game. I didn't create the video game. But I'm a character and I'm moving as a character in this video game. And I'm telling you that what is moving this character is a presence. In the same way you are sitting at your table and the computer screen, the reality of the computer screen is completely different than the reality of the beings sitting behind it using the computer. Similarly, I find that life is a game the soul is playing, but the soul is a game the God is playing. But it is a game that it returns back to the original. So what does that mean? What's opening up in my inner realms right now is that I guess I can process emotions now. But let me tell you how I'm going to explain it. It's like someone being like, "All right, man, let me see if I can think about my emotions in this way." My emotions are typically seem to be based on my interactions in life. So I got to look at life, and life, let's say, is 100-year journey. It's 100-year bell curve. Okay, so my emotions. Let's say if people are like, be emotionally honest, and if I was to be emotionally honest, I would probably descend into anguish. But but then ask God to forgive hell. There is a clue in Islam. God, one of the names of God is the all forgiving. So guys, I'm sharing my like codes of thought here. I'm pretty much saying, all right, man. So what is life? The human being is born. Let's say it lives 100 years. The emotions are relevant for 100 years. The value of the emotions is how it affects the decisions that's being made in these 100 years. Ultimately, the hardest emotion is going to be the end. So in some sense, if I can confront the emotion of the end, it should make the emotional life, the journey through it easier. So this might sound bizarre, but the way a way I might have, not I might have, I think the way I regulated my emotions was to some degree feel that, all right, everyone we see here is going to leave this place one day. Every one of us is going to leave this place one day. So that's the reality. The reality is we're candle flames in a dark room, and if you can confront that it will end. And what greater fear than death? And even if they say there is no death, in the sense that after death there's something else, it continues. So, ladies and gentlemen, I guess the strategy I'm sharing here is that if you confront the ending, the reality of the ending, it might make it easier to begin anew. For me, the idea of death, which our species views as impure, and there is an impurity to it if it's unnatural, as something that we fear because it is an exit. And there's a lot of mythology. Greek mythology talks about, guards of the underworld. There's punishment of hellfire in theology. There's pain, suffering, misery, all of this. But it's pretty much, I'm saying, you drive comfortably when you set the GPS, because the GPS is taking you to the truth of your destination. Right? So, in the same way a person drives a vehicle with a GPS, I think confronting certain truths about life, that it's like a bell curve, that it's also like, we don't know how to value experiences all the time, and how much is humanity missing out on. If we had advanced AI, like imagine, some imagines, some guys walking, outside and suddenly sees a beautiful girl, right? And then he looks at her body language, And he says, no, no, her body language is closed off, right? And then imagine the AI scans that situation, your own personal Jarvis, and says, no, man, you were wrong. Do you know? Do you know? It's like you misread the body language, you know? You demonstrated density, do you know? So, so what I'm trying to say is that life is very fascinating because we really don't know how to approach it, but we have to approach it and go see what it is. And I'm just trying to tell you that whoever you are on this planet, we got to kind of find protocols for the extreme. So if you ever in this planet, I'm saying this to anyone, okay? If you ever feel so emotionally down, that means you're looking down on yourself. So like you experience one of the darkest nights of your soul, okay, as the expression goes. In that moment of sorrow, misery, any sort of lament, anguish, despair, powerlessness, failure, disrespect, dishonor, in whatever low point you reach in your life, remember this. Take a deep breath and accept that you don't have all the answers, and it's okay. Remember this. In the darkest moments of your life, you might feel so overwhelmed. I felt this as a human being. There were nights where my mind was so displeased with what like my me not being where I wanted to be, that it was from all dimensions the overwhelmment were coming. That means it was like I had messed up in one thing, and then suddenly I felt in everything that emotion was like rendering every memory as every other thing I thought next as messed up. Okay? And pretty much I'm saying that this life, I do believe that it does have a pressure on us. It's not just gravity, it's not just natural forces. There's psychological forces that have a pressure on us. And life may overwhelm you at some point. I'm saying in those moments, this was the protocol. Take a deep breath, accept you don't have all the answers, and it's okay. And the third thing is just take one simple step at a time. Just do one thing simple. That means if there's somebody, at the edge of a, God forbid, at the edge of a building or at the edge of a bridge, do you know what I mean? The protocol is, first of all, like, that's not cool, get off the bridge, or the heights. And second of all, it's okay to be imperfect. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's way more interesting to go through this life and get to see what it was about rather than, getting off the ride early. So there is a future that we're all going to be surprised by. And that future is going to also show you. That means there's versions of you. Like if you went back in time and you asked this shy, introverted kid that I was, hey, do you think you're going to give 10,000 talks? I would be too shy to respond to you and I'd probably leave. You know what I mean? So I'm saying, and I'd no way I would believe that I would be doing this. So I'm saying you don't know how life is going to change. You might overwhelm yourself with the stress of trying to solve everything at the same time or having to have had solved everything at the same time. But the best thing is take one simple step at a time. Go eat an apple. Go make a cup of tea. Go in some sense, I don't know, clean your house or something. You know what I mean? So I'm saying take one simple action and go one step at a time. When life is too intense and overwhelming, even emotionally too hard to bear, just simplify things. Simplify everything immediately, right? And there's times in life where it's the opposite, where the emotions all the dimensions are met. That means in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in all those levels, you're honored. And you've reached that point of like superior power and comfort and ease. You don't understand. The kings on this planet and emperors on this planet, the real ones, they lived very comfortably. They had the luxury of not getting distracted by lower level stress, at least. Do you know that means nobody wanted a king that in some sense was distracted by the overall vision of the whole kingdom. Excuse me, that was distracted from the overall vision of the kingdom. So there's a story about Alexander the Great. He what's the thing? He hired someone at the peak of his power. He hired someone, just some random person, some simple person, and he's like, anytime you see me caught in the ego of an emperor, your job is to come and whisper in my ear, you're just a man. Do you understand? That means even if you're at the opposite angle, you're super happy, everything's blessed, everything is great, you got to realize you're just a human being. That's the core truth that's going to unite all of us. We're going from nationalism to speciesism, and your emotions shift in accordance to your context of value. So I guess, guys, to wrap this up, emotions are important, but they are important because understanding life is important. They are a part of life. You as a human being, if you're young, a person listening to me, your emotional vocabulary might not be that advanced. Also, it's based on the experiences you live in life. For example, I wasn't raised traditionally, like I was born in Iran, but I was raised in Canada. And so I kind of have a sort of hybridized ethics. And you gotta trust yourself to be able to trust others. So I'm telling you, don't stay shy, don't stay introverted. It's occurring because of a misevaluation. Okay? Pretty much our task as an advanced humanity is to limit misunderstanding, to reduce it. Elon Musk had this interesting thing where he said, when he starts a business, he's going to assume it's going to fail, and he just reduces the percentage of failure every day. That was how he managed his emotions. Now, if you have this view on life, where imagine life is going to, I mean, it's not the best view. I'm just saying, I'm just seeing the metaphor kind of fractalize. It's kind of like being like, all right, man, let's say I fail. Let's assume that I'm going to fail in this life. So let me try to reduce the percentage of failure. Now, somebody's going to be like, Mr. Within, is this the best strategy, though, when you can pay attention to the success? The issue is sometimes you might not be able to value the success if you were not open to the initial failure. When I was young, I thought failure was bad. I realized failure is initiation. Every time you fail in anything, if you just continue in it, it's as if it's like, this is before I truly became Muslim. I had this view that there was a spirit to things. So as a soccer player, it's as if you would fail in that, and the failure was a test. But now it's all a test from God, I see it. To be honest, it's not that I don't care about the moderators. I care about the system, everything the system admin, the system admin system. It's just that I directly go to the system admin. So even if somebody was like, hey, as a Muslim, do you need help with your emotions? Do you need help with like, you know, whatever? And I'll be like, as a Muslim, because you're a simulated being asking that, because we're in a simulated world, I can only request it from the original. For me, my emotions, if somebody's like, hey man, what's regulating your emotions or your whole being? It's the higher ideal. There's an option to treat this room as an empty room, or as if this party, this life party, has a host. There's a host here. Anyways, think about this sentence. If I can't trust my emotions, how can I trust others? That means if you can't imagine emotions are a language, and if you can't speak a language, if someone comes and speaks a different language to you, excuse me, speaks an emotional language to you, you might not understand it. And I think I speak for all men when I say that women have to comprehend that men speak a different emotional language than women. But this is like, common, everybody knows. Everybody experientially knows. Yeah. Anyways, guys, I hope this lecture was insightful, and I tried my best, and I will keep doing so. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.